coming today to the first in what we hope is going to become a series of interviews with visiting artists to our institution. And today we are really excited to launch the series with Heather Raffo. And let me just give you a little background on Heather. Heather received her BA from the University of Michigan, her MFA from the University of San Diego, and she studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London. She is an accomplished actress, and she has performed many roles with the famous acting company and with the Old Globe Theater in San Diego. She's appeared in national tours, and she has appeared off-Broadway. She is best known for her, and most famous now, for her one-woman show, 9 Parts of Desire. For that play, she was awarded the Susan Smith Blackburn Prize Special Commendation and the Marion Seldes Garson Kamen Fellowship. She received a 2005 Lucille Lortel Award for Best Solo Show, as well as an Outer Critics Circle nomination and a Drama League nomination for Outstanding Performance. She first performed the play in August 2003 in Edinburgh, then later in London's Off West End, where critics hailed it as one of the 5 best plays in London. Its New York premiere took place at the Manhattan Ensemble Theater, where the show ran for 9 sold-out months. The play has toured the U.S., playing at the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles, Berkeley Rep, Seattle Rep, the Wilma Theater, and the Arena Stage in D.C. She continues to explore the American-Iraqi relationship with her new collaboration, which will be presented tomorrow evening, Tuesday, September 22nd at 7 p.m. in the Johnson Theater, entitled Sounds of Desire. Please join me in welcoming Heather Raffo. Thank you very much for joining us. So just to get the ball rolling, I'd like to just talk a little bit about your background. Before you even came to the theater, you were born in Michigan, and your parents, your father was Iraqi, and your mother American. So
Irish, German, American.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your growing up years?
You know, it's my growing up was completely American. Michigan has one of the largest Arab American communities outside the Middle East, and oddly enough, we weren't in it. it was down the road a ways. It was in Dearborn, which is only an hour 15 from our house. But for all intents and purposes, growing up, I didn't really know that it existed. I mean, we went to get some groceries, and that's that. So I think that my sense of I have friends that grew up in a very ethnic community within America. I have friends that are Italian American. They, couldn't speak English until they got to kindergarten. But that wasn't my upbringing. It felt absolutely like we were from Michigan, with the exception of the fact that there was about 70 family members in Baghdad that we heard of, we knew of. Whenever they would call, my dad would suddenly speak Arabic on the phone, and my brother and I would giggle and run up and listen in on the other phone just to hear to hear what was being said, even though we couldn't understand a word of it. But aunts and uncles started to visit in the early 70s. I went in 1974 when I was 4 years old, and that was that trip shaped me. I can say it's bizarre to think that a 4-year-old would remember as much as I remembered, but I think that perhaps because it was so different, I took it in on a very visceral level. I remembered smells, I remembered the layout of my grandmother's house, I remember foods, I just remembered the people that I got along with and played with and why it was exciting. I remember walking through Babylon. I remember sleeping on the roof at night, which of course at 4, you get to sleep under a mosquito net and you look at the stars and your uncle's telling you what's what and what's going, it's not Michigan anymore. You know what I mean? It's really exciting. So those kind of things, I think they just stuck. The milk would be delivered by donkey to my grandmother's doorstep, and that was cool. And the way they made the egg, and all those little things that a kid would know. But it really changed me. And what I find interesting is it didn't really do so with my brother. I don't think my brother was 6 at the time, and he didn't like any of it. Well, he got sick all the time. You know, the food didn't agree with him, the weather didn't agree with him, travel didn't agree with him. And I thought it was the best thing ever. I thought airplanes were cool. I thought, and it was like I finally made it somewhere at 4. You know what I mean? Like I just knew it was exciting.
Now, did you go back to visit?
No, I went back in '93, so there was a big chunk of time. Yeah, and basically what happened is, that was '74. For the next about 6 years, aunts and uncles would come to visit us, and then the Iran-Iraq War started. Saddam came to power in '79. I think in '80, '81, they invaded Iran. So it was suddenly, not safe to go in, and they weren't allowed to come out. So
did you
all
still
my
have
cousins.
phone conversations about?
We had phone conversations that we could get through if we called 20 times in a row and one line got through. And then once you get through, it's how are you? We're fine, everything's fine. Because they knew their phones were tapped. So we never had, you would never have a political conversation.
Right.
But even a conversation of how are you health-wise or what's going on was that you never knew if you were really getting the full story. The only person that was able to come visit us during that period was an aunt that had breast cancer. And they let her out for treatment in America, but they let her out late. So it wasn't even if you were sick, it wasn't like you had a ticket to leave.
Right.
And then we thought, okay, the Iran-Iraq War was ended. Great, now we'll have relations again and we can get back. And within a year or two, they invaded Kuwait, and then the Gulf War happened. So it was sort of, for most of my adult life, let alone my childhood, the country was shut down.
Yeah.
And when I went in '93, it was blacklisted. When I went in '93, I was 23, so I'd just gotten out of undergrad. And they said, the American embassy in Jordan said, if you go in, we're not going to protect you. It's a blacklisted country. If you go in,
You're on your own.
You're on your own.
Yeah.
And I just thought, okay, I'm here, I'm going to do it. I'd been traveling a lot on my own after graduating, and it was a calling so great. I sort of felt at peace knowing that I would be fine. But looking back, of course, I wouldn't want my daughter doing it. Anyway.
Yeah. But let's go back just a second to the moment of the opening volley of the Gulf War.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you talk about that a little bit on your website, and it really had a clear, strong impact on you.
Yeah. It was. What was defining about the Gulf War was that it was the first war of my generation, and to be both Iraqi and American, experiencing your first war in your early 20s. It's a moment that you're heavily shaped. Any of you that are students here now, you know that you're shaped by this curriculum. You know that you're shaped by 9/11. You know that you're shaped by, the war with Iraq and Afghanistan. And these are things that are part of your makeup. They're part of how you enter college, how you will choose to view the world, and what you will choose to view what war is. No matter what direction your choices are. It's the war of your generation, so to speak. So I think that for me, I was a bit startled to find myself on both sides of the issue. To find myself with 70 family members in Baghdad and, being from America watching the first war happen. And I think that what I also found startling was the wars previous that I had studied were, World War II and the Vietnam War and things like that, where Vietnam War, the protests were great, and World War II, the sense of honor was great. And suddenly I was thrust into this war where none of that was happening. And I was sort of wondering, well, what's war? What's this about?